And I am now super excited to welcome my colleague and friend, Julie Smithson, who has been working behind the scenes to do a sense-making exercise and to sort of try to pull out some of the themes and concepts that have been shared here all through the day. And I can't wait to see what you've come up with, Julie. I'm going to hop out here, let you show this. I will pop in a little bit later and maybe ask you some questions about it. But
yeah, can you see my screen there, Karen?
I am going to bring it. There it is. Okay, there you go.
There you go. There we go. Okay, everybody can see my screen. I've been a little bit busy while everybody's been chatting here. So one of the things that I started to do when we started all these WebXR summits last year with the developer conference and that sort of thing was I've been listening, obviously, and kind of taking notes on what everybody's saying and what I plan to do in the next half an hour. And Karen's going to join me after I go through all of this and just kind of pull out some of the repetitive conversations that we've had, some of the important conversations. They're all important, of course. But what I've done here is drilling into everybody who has spoken today, just, what are those important key pieces? Because it's great that we meet, at these sessions. Like we're drinking from a fire hose, as we've heard a couple of times today, right? So, we wanted to be able to present to everybody what did we hear today? What are the important and key pieces? And what I've done is I've taken some screenshots and also dropped in some of the comments even from the chat. So I'd like to start with the fireside chat with Mina Johnson Glenberg that we had this morning at 11 o'clock. Yes, that was today. That was 7 hours ago, and we're still here. And this is where I started. Mina and Karen, they talked, and I'm referencing my screen here. I've got a couple of screens. Excuse me if I'm not looking directly at the camera because I've got to reference my notes. But let's start with, they talked about the funness of 3D, and I think Laurel mentioned that just in one of the past panels as well. Is let's start there. Let's make VR fun, right? It shouldn't be stressful, and there's so much exploratory things to look at and to build and put together. So some of the things that they also talked about was having agency that matters, and having cognitive prompts, and the movement inside VR. I thought that was kind of interesting, having low body condition movements and high body condition movements to try and test out your spaces and avatars and things like that. So and we're going to share out some of this afterwards. So if you don't catch all of what I'm saying, we'll make sure that you have some of these references. Steve Grubbs, unfortunately, we did drop it into the chat, and we'll also provide that in the Discord channel so everybody can learn more about Metaversity. The lessons from Steve's talk was, students love to learn, and giving them this technology, it just, it opens up so many possibilities of being able to teach them and immerse them into that experience. So, one of the comments that Christy Fennison said in the chat was stepping into a healthy heart versus a diseased heart and looking around with a professor, and students can experience perspectives that have, previously before been impossible. So Steve, thank you so much for your work that you're doing with Metaversity and providing that that teaching environment that exposes students. So then we moved on to the state of immersive learning with XR with the iLearn team, and I thought this was also really interesting, just on how they took small groups of studies, and one of the things Maya talked about was how more involved was this year as opposed to last year, because people on the team had a chance to think about it and also start to build purpose. And I'm going to show you some points that I on the side of this document here, but building with purpose has been repeated over and over and over again. So I think that now we've kind of cleared our minds from this pandemic. We know we have to use the technology, and now it's how do we use this technology? Show us how. Let's learn about these case studies. So just a few more points from their conversation. Looking for purpose in experiences, just like what I said. Keith just mentioned it too, building with purpose, and really zoning in on that piece before developing, because there's so many other things to consider. Privacy and ethics, that also came up quite a bit. And the fact that we're going through such dynamic change, how do we support each other through this? Then we had a talk on empowering teachers with XR tools, and do we bring the students into VR within the classrooms, or do we bring the classrooms out into VR? I think that was one of the questions that, or one of the things that was said, and I thought that was really insightful. Putting kids in control of their experience. Yeah, why not, right? Putting them in their own learning, and starting with learning outcomes. That was one of the other things. And here, let me zoom in so we can see some more of these notes here. You see opportunities that no one could have predicted in making the experience better. Using maker spaces. This was also another key component, and XR helps alleviate thoughts of risk failure from that they're being assessed. And I thought this was interesting. Steve Bambury said, "Don't be afraid to fall, because you're gonna." And I have a few quotes from people throughout the day, but that was one that I captured there. So moving on, we had transforming education in Africa. And again, this is such an interesting conversation just on the exposure of technology is global, and providing opportunities to everyone, no matter where you are located in the world. So there was a lot of great conversation I had with his panel, talking about contextualization. Visualization was huge, really driving into why you're using this technology, and giving things purpose. They talked about muscle memory being important. 360 videos give you the environment and location. Using stories to connect the why am I using the technology. And this has also been a part of the conversations that we've talked about today, is the why. Why are we doing this? So that the students can connect those business applications, the industry applications, the verticals, just to connecting the dots, so that they have that belief that, this system works. This is a good thing that's happening. Partners with government. That was one of the other things, and that actually champions onto a couple of other things. We then went on to a conversation on championing the arts and humanities, led by Carlos Ochoa, and just talking about how, finding those stakeholders in every school, and amplifying, XR does amplify work, it changes teaching, storytelling goes into the storytelling. And this was something that I think, as teachers, you have to put that effort into storytelling with that interactivity in mind, and then creating and evolving in that storytelling as you go. We then had Dr. Jennifer Rogers, and assessing learning for learning. So, understanding the landscape. She talked about the pipeline crisis right now, jobs of skill sets, and that's a whole separate conference, I think, on its own. But the skill sets that that do need to evolve is around spatial awareness and design, but also about data collection and being able to apply all of these new technologies into experience as well. So I know she provided some great insight into her resources, and we'll definitely have those available. We then had another panel with enabling different abilities with XR content, and this was also really interesting. There's some great resources that we'll also provide to you. The discussion around accessibility for those who have autism, but also accessibility in general, just to have the digital devices available to everybody. But this panel talked about workflow for accessibility and making sure that you have people with disabilities on your team so that you can build for everyone, including your own team. There was also a comment on if you build it, they will come. Doing user testing for accessibility, redistribution courses, and more accessibility. If you build more accessibility into your applications, the more people will use it. And I truly believe that, because I think that that's the best way to create that adoption. Okay, so that was the first stretch. Here we go. More. ADA compliance for immersive technologies. It's a shift in the mindset. This was from Roland Dubois, and he provided some great insight into digital accessibility in the classrooms, and the ADA compliance that applies to all media. We then heard from Rebecca DuPont on equity in teaching next-gen XR developers, and approaching the problem. Space is important. Teaching is more important. Preparing kids in 2 years versus 4 years in university for the skills that they need to go back out into the ecosystem. Is the 4-year degree necessary? And sharing information is the way to go. We also heard from Karen and her panel, administering XR programs. This was really interesting, just behind the scene, supporting the faculty and the visions for the programs, access to space, access to tech, set of values while driving XR, and access to community. As well as creating a magical space, an emporium. That was one of the words that was being used, and making development attainable. So then we went on to the gamification and instructional design for immersive learning. And really it's about transformational framework, impacting the player and evidence-based practices. This had everything to do with game elements, gamification versus gaming, and those equals psychology elements, and the importance of a narrative. That was also a really big piece, and the social presence, and how games approach our approach to motivation, and that's a huge key piece. I feel like we didn't have enough time to talk about all of that stuff. XR and medical education. This was a fascinating discussion just on new ways to learn about anatomy and 3D thinking. This was the other part, just about spatial design and awareness. And this was more about 3D meta-humans and using 360s, 3D use cases, and having coders and designers work together. This is a huge piece of internal collaboration, I think, and the standards for learning within the medical space. We then heard from Clayton and Shannon and Angelina on bringing immersive education to underserved communities, and digital divide. We're not preparing our students right now, but yet the study for it. Give them the technology and they'll find a way in. You don't need headsets to learn. There's a lot of technology out there, tablets, mobile devices. Everybody's got one in the extension of their hand. So this is where WebXR comes into play, to be able to give that access to learning to everyone. And, empowering the teachers, empowering the students. The students are educating themselves, so keeping up with them on that, and as well as internet access as well. And then we moved on to building community among XR educators with Daniel Dabrowski-Bryan and his panel. And that was all about, how do you create, more learning for teachers, and the encouragement of joining XR communities to learn from, and to find your community, find your, the people who are doing the same things as you, so that you have something in common and you have that motivation to learn more, and even finding a learning buddy to be able to share that experience with. They talked a little bit about how do we reach those teachers who do not know yet, and it's about inviting them into that space. And then obviously learning with somebody or a partner or with a team, doing that. We talked a little bit about content creation pipeline, and that was actually mentioned a couple of times and in the chat, that we really need a better pipeline of resources. So that came out. And Sage mentioned, stepping out of your comfort zone as a teacher to learn. Go play in the sandbox and learn from all the people, because you're not going to learn by yourself right now. Things are happening so fast. So I think I have 2 more, and then I'm going to bring Karen in to do a bit of a wrap up with me after this. But we had the safety, privacy, and design with Karen and Rolando. And that obviously is an eye opener when we start talking about, where schools are at risk of violating the rights of even the students, just from data collection. And, what are we doing to manage this right now when teachers don't even know how data is collected, or schools aren't even sure? If you ask the principal and they don't even know that. So if they don't know that, then are there really policies in place? And that's the scary part about today, is that, the next generation, who's protecting this generation that's going into school in September, where we're advancing in this technology, but the policies and the governances are not in place. I thought this was cool. Power to the person, PETA said, and there's obviously concerns of selling data out of need. So putting these the governing bodies together to be able to manage ethical design is also a key piece. And then we just finished with Keith Chan talking about virtual campuses and classrooms. It was discussions of spatial awareness, classroom management, learning by doing. It's just a web click away to access this technology now. It's not a headset away. And it's a new way of teaching. And the beauty is it's just a browser. So Karen, I hope I encompassed a little bit and did a good summary.
Wow.
I do have some points here that what I did is things that kept repeating themselves, right? Like,
yes. Yeah.
So this is where I kind of brought some of these pieces over. So, and I kind of highlighted a little bit here. Let's start with digital mindset, because I think that is one of the key core human capacities of ourselves right now, to be able to maintain a fire hose of information while we're in exponential growth, right?
Absolutely.
And how do we maintain that? Is there something that you do, Karen, that keeps yourself with a healthy mindset? I know you and I have conversations a lot about okay, what are we doing? Breathe. There's another step away, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and today has been a bit of a fire hose in a good way. Really, I've loved it all. There's just so much rich material and so many amazing people who are sharing their knowledge and their expertise here today. And I to go back, some of the things that stood out to me, I think, maybe they had or became more apparent to me as you were going through this sense making, Julie, is one of them is this building. You said building with purpose, or intentional design, ethical design, intentionality, and why. I think all of those are tied together. And that is an activity that we need to keep at the forefront, and that we need to focus on, and we need to do so as a community. And community was another key theme that kept recurring for me. And so, yes, coming together as a community to work on this intentional design, to share our thoughts, our talents, our ideas, our perspectives, and moving forward there. And access, accessibility, and that's in multiple ways. Whether it's the
Multiple ways. That's great.
Yes, exactly. But still, that overarching theme and how important that is. I started to at one point I was going to stop there with those 4. But then I, got into things like creativity, and even the storytelling and the narrative, the emporium, the magic, and how those sorts of things, and that spark of of creativity and joy. You know, we heard the dancing in VR. You know,
That's right.
yeah,
VR,
yeah.
why not?
Yeah, and then maybe one more I would add to that would be the reflection, and this is in part to do with things like what the iLearn is doing with the State of XR report, sort of looking back at everything and thinking, okay, where are we? You know, and exactly what you're doing here, Julie, this sense making exercise. You know, I think that's another key term. And I wanted to to talk about one thing that Roland Dubois said that really stood out to me, and I won't get it exactly right, but it was he was saying that people thought that the limitations came from the disability itself, but then they realized it wasn't that. The limitations came from the bias in the approaches and the way that things were designed. I thought that was a really fascinating and enlightening quotation. I'd love to pull that out. I have to reach out to him and get it.
I think that kind of ties back with ethical design and just that the UI that, you know, is a part of every experience, that you really don't end up fine tuning it until the last bit, because you're so busy putting all these different things into the experience and connecting this plugin and connecting that plugin. And then, oh yeah, there's no instruction there to you know, to flip that configuration or something like that. And yeah, that's why the storyboarding process right from the beginning, and understanding, somebody said that, you know, it matters what values you have when you're building right from the beginning. And I think that was another interesting piece of, you know, every company should have a set of values of how they ethically design something so that they can start there. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that came from either Heather Hasley from ASU or from Emily Sherwood, you know, probably said in another way in other sessions, but I think that was explicitly stated there. Yes, I really am struck, and you know, you and I know from some of the work we do how important the design process is.
That's right.
And, yeah.
Yeah. And
that's
maybe
accessibility. No, just saying, yeah, to accessibility too, right? Yes.
That's right. Yeah. And maybe we can circle back just to the digital mindset and use the last couple of minutes to talk about, you know, what is the right digital mindset and, you know, job skills. I know we talked a little bit about that throughout the day as well, of, you know, how do we train for these skill sets that we're just learning on the fly now? And, you know, if you can find those people to be part of your team, one of the things that you need to make sure, not just for your team but yourself, is to become adaptive. And I read this last week in one of the Harvard business magazines, but it was a statement that says, don't just adapt, become adaptive. So if everybody wants to take that away with them, become adaptive, because tomorrow is going to be another day. There's going to be another update, there's going to be a merger, there's going to be another integration that happens, somebody's going to you know, push something, or something might break. So having that healthy mindset to be able to have that on your team, so that they are prepared for the instability of innovation, because it's going to happen. And, you know, even you know, what did they say? Hold on a second, let me just go.
Can you find that on your board?
I know. Hold my notes here. Don't be afraid to fall, because you're gonna. That's what Steve said.
Oh yes. That was, don't be afraid to fail, because you're gonna. Yeah, I love that too. That really stood out to me as well. And yeah, that you know, you could call it resilience too. And we don't, you know, we don't know when there will be another pandemic or a war will break out, right? So you know, we do have to be adaptable, and we do have to be resilient, and you know, sort of keep our eyes on the prize and keep moving forward, and being ready to step this way and that, to do the dance in VR, right? To learn how to dance. Yeah. Absolutely.
I have to say, I think the most the word that was used the most, I think, and I kept writing different Post-its. I'm like, I wrote this already. And I'm going to zone in on it right now. It's a big C word here: community.
Yes. Yes.
Community. This is like the keyword of the day. And
I
I think
agree.
it just leads to that socialization that we need to have as humans. First of all,
Mhm.
we need to have that as humans, but it's the way that we're going to support each other as we go through this intensive growth stage that we're at. And it's not going to change tomorrow or next week. We have to learn, how are we going to live with this ever change that's going to happen, and all of these new technologies that will affect how we build the experiences and how we react to those experiences, and then the data captured. So the lesson for me to share with everybody today is that it's all about community. Create those partnerships that that you can sustain yourself with, and don't do this alone. I think that's one of the key things. This is not a place to do anything by yourself.
Yeah.
Find your partners, find your tribe, find your group of people, find other people that have the same interests as you, same passions as you, so that you can strive to do more in this space. And I'm certainly grateful for being a part of this WebXR Summit series, and my team here in front of me and behind the scenes, because we wouldn't be able to do any of this without all of us, right?
Right, exactly.
So,
Yes, yes, yes. It does take multiple people, and I think part of the thing about community is that our world is so complex now, and the technology is so complex, and it's moving so quickly. Is that it's not really possible for one human mind to comprehend everything. So you have to be in relationship and in community and in dialogue with other people in order to build on what they have to share. We really can't do this alone. Another thing I want to say is that it came up several times that, we need to continue this conversation. We need to have a follow-up event. We need to do something else. So I'm just putting it out there that, I think that needs to happen too. And I think that there are ways that we can continue to support educators. And there are other groups out there who are doing this work already. I mean, Educators in VR, for one example. I learn, we can partner with them, again, communities of communities, and find ways that we can all share with, learn from, and support each other.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, why don't we take the last 2 minutes of my talk and again thank our sponsors. First of all, FutureWay, who made today possible, as well as XRconnectED, your company, my company, MetaVRse, and all of the viewing spaces, immersive spaces that we have out there. VR Land, Age, we got Twitch going, we got YouTube, we've got Frame.
Also,
we got
yeah.
Somebody said we have 11 ways to watch this show, and it's recorded, so multiple. There's no.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
But
really amazing.
we still have one more hour of great show, and we have an amazing show coming up. So lots of things coming up in the next little bit, and we have our next panel coming in, so that's great.
Wonderful. Yeah, great. Oops. Jumped the gun there. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Julie, thank you so much. I'm amazed at your ability to do this sense making and to pull these things out of this event. That was really fun, and I think a worthwhile exercise.
Thanks very much. I'm going to go and do some more sense making off of this panel. So thanks very much, everybody.
Okay.